1. The issue of Karoshi, death from overwork. Japan is one of the world's leading economic powers. Yet it faces a serious issue, Karoshi, death from overwork. This problem stems from a high-pressure work culture where employees often work from early morning until late at night and rarely take time off. According to the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, hundreds of deaths are officially attributed to Karoshi each year, including cases of stroke, heart attack, and suicide. A notable example is Matsuri Takahashi, a young employee of the advertising giant Dentsu, who committed suicide in 2015 after working more than 105 hours of overtime in a single month. This tragedy sparked widespread criticism of Japan's harsh work environment. The issue is not limited to large corporations but is also prevalent in small and medium-sized enterprises. Many workers avoid taking breaks or requesting leave out of fear of being labeled as irresponsible. A government survey found that over 25% of employees work more than 80 hours of overtime per month, a threshold considered dangerous to health. This excessive workload not only impacts physical health but also creates severe psychological stress, contributing to rising rates of depression and suicide. Some measures have been introduced, such as the government's Premium Friday initiative, which encourages employees to leave work early on the last Friday of the month, and legislation capping overtime at 100 hours per month. However, these efforts have not effectively addressed the issue, as the culture of intense work remains deeply ingrained in both workers and employers. Karoshi is not just a societal challenge but also a wake-up call about the trade-off between economic development and the quality of human life. 2. High suicide rates. Japan has one of the highest suicide rates among developed countries, a deeply concerning issue that reflects the intense societal pressures many individuals face. According to statistics from the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, over 20,000 people take their own lives annually, with men in their 40s and 50s and young adults being the most affected groups. One of the most infamous locations tied to this issue is the Aokigahara Forest, also known as the Suicide Forest, near Mount Fuji, where dozens of bodies are discovered each year. A notable case is that of Jizatsu no Mori Suicide Forest in 2010, when over 200 suicide attempts were documented in the forest alone, sparking global attention to Japan's mental health crisis. The roots of Japan's high suicide rate lie in a combination of factors, including workplace stress, societal stigma surrounding mental health, and economic instability. For instance, the economic collapse in the 1990s, known as the Lost Decade, resulted in skyrocketing suicide rates as individuals struggled with unemployment and mounting debt. More recently, the pandemic exacerbated mental health issues, particularly among women, who saw a 70% increase in suicide rates in 2020 compared to the previous year. As reported by the National Police Agency, culturally, Japan's historical perception of suicide as an honorable act, dating back to samurai traditions like seppuku, ritual suicide, still influences societal attitudes. This, combined with a lack of accessible mental health care and the stigma surrounding seeking help, leaves many individuals feeling isolated. Despite government initiatives such as suicide hotlines and community support programs, the deeply entrenched cultural and systemic issues continue to hinder significant progress. The high suicide rate in Japan serves as a stark reminder of the urgent need for societal reform and greater emphasis on mental health awareness and support systems. 3. Social pressure and isolation. Japan's societal structure, though often admired for its order and discipline, has a darker side that manifests in the phenomenon of hikikomori, or extreme social withdrawal. This condition affects an estimated 1.5 million people, according to a 2021 survey by the Japanese Cabinet Office. Hikikomori individuals often isolate themselves in their homes, sometimes for years, avoiding work, school, and social interactions. The issue is particularly prevalent among young men aged 15 to 39, though recent reports indicate that older individuals, including those in their 50s and 60s, are increasingly affected. The root causes of hikikomori lie in the intense pressure to conform to societal expectations. Japan's education and career systems place enormous emphasis on competition and success, leaving many unable to cope with failure or rejection. A notable case is that of Saito Tamaki, a psychiatrist who coined the term hikikomori in the 1990s. He described patients who had retreated entirely from society due to feelings of inadequacy, often stemming from bullying, academic struggles, or job loss. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated this issue, with many individuals finding comfort in the isolation imposed by lockdowns, further entrenching their withdrawal. Families of hikikomori often suffer silently due to the stigma surrounding the condition, leading to a phenomenon known as 80-50 problem, where aging parents, in their 80s, are left to care for their middle-aged hikikomori children in their 50s. Despite government efforts to address the problem through counseling services and community reintegration programs, progress has been slow. Many hikikomori remain hesitant to seek help due to deep-seated shame and fear of judgment. This widespread social withdrawal highlights the urgent need for cultural shifts that prioritize mental health, reduce societal pressure, and foster environments where vulnerability is accepted rather than stigmatized. 4. Gender discrimination. Despite its reputation as a progressive society, Japan continues to grapple with deeply ingrained gender inequality, which manifests in both professional and domestic spheres. The World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report 2023 ranked Japan 125th out of 146 countries, highlighting the persistent disparities in economic participation, political representation, and wage equality. Women in Japan earn, on average, 23.5% less than men, one of the largest gender pay gaps among developed nations. According to the OECD, one striking example of this inequality is the maternity harassment (matahara) phenomenon, where pregnant women or new mothers face discrimination at work. A 2015 survey by the Ministry of Health revealed that 48.7% of working women reported some form of mistreatment after announcing their pregnancy, ranging from job termination to exclusion from career advancements. This has discouraged many women from returning to work after childbirth, contributing to Japan's abysmally low female workforce participation rate in leadership roles. Only 15% of management positions are held by women, compared to an average of 33% in OECD countries. The cultural expectation for women to prioritize family over careers exacerbates the issue. Japan's societal norms still heavily lean on traditional gender roles, where women are seen as primary caregivers while men are the breadwinners. This pressure is further amplified by a lack of affordable childcare facilities and long working hours for men, leaving women with limited options to balance work and family life. While initiatives like former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's Womenomics policy aim to promote women in the workforce, progress has been slow. The entrenched societal expectations and structural barriers continue to hinder true gender equality, reflecting a need for deeper cultural and policy reforms to empower women and bridge the gender gap in Japan. 5. Lack of inclusion for foreigners. Despite its global image as a welcoming and orderly society, Japan struggles with issues of inclusion, particularly towards foreign residents and tourists. The term gaijin, meaning foreigner, often carries a subtle undertone of exclusion, and many foreigners report feeling like perpetual outsiders, even after living in Japan for decades. A 2017 survey by the Japanese Ministry of Justice found that 40% of foreign residents had experienced discrimination, particularly in housing and employment. Landlords frequently refuse to rent apartments to foreigners, citing reasons like language barriers or cultural differences. Despite legal protections against such practices, discrimination also extends to social settings. Some bars, restaurants, and onsen, hot springs, display signs explicitly stating Japanese only, a practice that, while technically illegal under Japanese law, often goes unpunished, even in professional environments. Foreigners may find themselves excluded from core decision-making processes or confined to temporary or lower-status roles. Regardless of their qualifications or contributions, language barriers further compound the issue, as fluency in Japanese is often a prerequisite for integration into local communities or career advancement. Many foreigners find it difficult to navigate daily life, such as opening a bank account or accessing healthcare, due to the lack of multilingual support. Additionally, the Technical Intern Training Program, intended to bring workers from developing countries to Japan, has been criticized for exploitative practices, with interns frequently subjected to long hours, low pay, and harsh working conditions. While Japan has made efforts to attract more foreign talent and address these issues, such as easing visa requirements and promoting international tourism, progress remains slow. These challenges highlight a disconnect between Japan's aspiration for globalization and the societal mindset that continues to view foreigners as temporary guests rather than integral members of the community. 6. Academic pressure on children. Japan's education system, though renowned for its discipline and academic rigor, imposes immense pressure on students, often leading to significant mental health challenges. From a young age, students are expected to excel academically to secure admission to prestigious schools and universities, a phenomenon known as the examination hell, shuriken jigaku, according to a 2019 survey by the National Center for Child Health and Development. Over 30% of Japanese middle and high school students reported experiencing severe stress related to exams and academic expectations. This relentless focus on academic success leaves little room for personal development or leisure. Many students attend after-school cram schools, known as juku, where they study late into the evening, sacrificing hobbies and family time. The intense competition creates a fear of failure, as students who do not perform well often face stigma from peers, teachers, and even parents. Tragically, this pressure has contributed to a rise in youth suicides. A report by Japan's Ministry of Education revealed that over 499 students took their own lives in 2022, with academic struggles cited as a leading cause. The problem is compounded by the rigid and uniform nature of the education system, which prioritizes conformity over creativity. Individual talents and alternative career paths are often overlooked in favor of traditional academic achievements. For instance, students who excel in arts, sports, or non-academic fields may struggle to gain recognition or opportunities in a system that predominantly values test scores. While the government has introduced reforms, such as reducing Saturday classes and promoting extracurricular activities, the deeply entrenched culture of academic competition remains a significant challenge. Japan's education system, despite its strengths, must address these issues to create a more balanced and supportive environment for its students. 7. The culture of school bullying. Bullying, or ijime, is a deeply ingrained and pervasive issue in Japan's school system, leaving lasting scars on countless students. Unlike overt physical aggression, ijime often manifests as subtle and systematic psychological abuse, such as exclusion, verbal taunts, or spreading rumors, making it difficult for teachers and parents to detect. A 2022 report by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology revealed that over 614,000 cases of bullying were reported in schools nationwide, an alarming increase compared to previous years. This suggests not only that the problem is growing, but also that many incidents likely remain unreported. One tragic case that brought national attention to ijime occurred in 2011, when a 13-year-old boy in Otsu committed suicide after enduring relentless bullying. Investigations revealed that classmates had coerced him into practicing mock suicides, highlighting the extreme psychological torment he faced. The incident sparked widespread outrage and prompted calls for stricter anti-bullying measures. But similar cases continue to surface. In 2020, a 14-year-old girl in Tokyo also ended her life after being ostracized and ridiculed by peers for her quiet demeanor and academic achievements. Cultural factors exacerbate the problem, as Japanese society places a high value on conformity and group harmony. Students who are perceived as different, whether due to their appearance, personality, or academic performance, are often targeted. Victims rarely speak out due to fear of further ostracization or shame. And many schools adopt a "don't rock the boat" attitude, prioritizing their reputation over addressing the issue. While the government has implemented anti-bullying laws and awareness campaigns, enforcement remains inconsistent. Teachers often lack the training or resources to intervene effectively, and the stigma surrounding mental health prevents many students from seeking help. The persistence of IJIME underscores the urgent need for cultural and systemic reforms to foster safer, more inclusive learning environments in Japanese schools. 8. Human trafficking and disguised prostitution. Despite its strict regulations on prostitution, Japan faces significant challenges with human trafficking and the exploitation of women, often disguised as legitimate businesses. The JK Joshi Kusei business, which involves high school girls offering companionship services such as walking, talking, or having meals with clients, has been criticized as a front for illicit activities, including prostitution. A 2019 report by the Polaris Project revealed that Japan remains a major destination and transit point for trafficked women, particularly from Southeast Asia, many of whom are coerced into working in exploitative conditions under the guise of entertainment or hospitality jobs. One notorious case involved a Filipino woman who was promised a job as a singer in Japan but ended up trapped in a hostess club, where she was forced to provide sexual services to pay off fabricated debts. The U.S. Department of State's 2023 Trafficking in Persons report placed Japan on the Tier 2 watch list, citing the country's insufficient efforts to combat trafficking and protect victims. Many women are lured through deceptive contracts and have their passports confiscated, leaving them with no means of escape. The exploitation is not limited to foreign workers. Japanese women, especially those facing financial difficulties, are often recruited into the adult entertainment industry under heavy pressure or false pretenses. A 2015 documentary by NHK highlighted how young women, some as young as 18, were coerced into performing in adult videos, with producers exploiting loopholes in the law to avoid prosecution. While Japan has introduced measures to address these issues, such as amending laws to increase penalties for human trafficking and supporting NGOs that help victims, enforcement remains weak. The societal reluctance to acknowledge these problems, coupled with the lack of widespread awareness, allows such practices to persist. Comprehensive reform and public education are urgently needed to combat human trafficking and protect vulnerable individuals in Japan. 9. The reality of homelessness. Japan, often admired for its technological advancements and economic prosperity, struggles with a hidden issue: homelessness, particularly in major cities like Tokyo and Osaka. Despite the nation's image of order and cleanliness, an estimated 4.000 people are officially recognized as homeless according to a 2023 survey by the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, although advocacy groups argue the actual number is likely much higher. Many homeless individuals live in parks, along riverbanks, or in makeshift tents, often invisible to the general public due to their efforts to remain inconspicuous. A significant contributing factor is Japan's lack of a robust social safety net. Older men are disproportionately affected, many of whom were once employed in the construction or manufacturing sectors during the economic boom of the 1980s and 1990s. Following the economic collapse of the lost decade, many lost their jobs and were unable to recover financially. Compounding this is Japan's rigid housing system, where renting often requires a guarantor and substantial upfront fees, effectively excluding those with limited resources or no family support. The COVID-19 pandemic further worsened the situation, with temporary workers in sectors like retail and hospitality facing job losses. For example, a 2020 report by the Nippon Foundation noted a sharp increase in the number of people relying on food banks, many of whom were at risk of homelessness. Additionally, Societal stigma prevents many homeless individuals from seeking help, as homelessness is often viewed as a personal failure rather than a systemic issue. Although the government has implemented programs like temporary shelters and vocational training, these efforts are limited and fail to address the root causes of homelessness, such as income inequality and job insecurity. Nonprofit organizations and community groups play a crucial role in providing food, clothing, and medical aid, but sustainable solutions require a greater commitment to housing reform, job creation, and reducing the societal stigma surrounding homelessness. 10. Illegal labor exploitation and trafficking. Japan's Technical Intern Training Program, TITP, initially designed to provide skills and training to workers from developing countries, has faced widespread criticism for exploiting foreign laborers under harsh and often abusive conditions. A 2022 report by the Japan International Trainee and Skilled Worker Cooperative Organization revealed that over 40% of participants had experienced unpaid wages, excessive working hours, or substandard living conditions. Many interns arrive with the hope of gaining valuable work experience, only to find themselves trapped in exploitative jobs, such as agriculture or construction, with limited rights and few avenues for recourse. A particularly egregious case occurred in 2018, when a Vietnamese intern was forced to work over 100 hours of overtime each month at a construction site in Aichi Prefecture. The worker ultimately died from a heart attack, a tragic example of the program's failures. Additionally, many interns have their passports confiscated by employers and are threatened with deportation if they complain, effectively silencing their voices. The U.S. Department of State's 2023 Trafficking in Persons report criticized Japan for failing to adequately address these abuses, noting that the TITP creates conditions ripe for forced labor. The systemic flaws in the program are compounded by Japan's aging population and labor shortages, which have made foreign workers indispensable in sectors that struggle to attract domestic labor. Yet, instead of offering fair treatment and integration into society, the program often relegates interns to low-paying, physically demanding jobs with little oversight. While the Japanese government has introduced reforms, such as stricter inspections and a hotline for complaints, these measures are often underfunded and inconsistently enforced. To address these issues, Japan must overhaul the TITP, transitioning it from a program focused on cheap labor to one genuinely committed to skill development and human rights. Without such changes, the program will continue to tarnish Japan's international reputation and undermine its efforts to attract global talent.